Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple quick links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and they are appreciated. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Today's first subscriber submission. Hello, Jeff. My name is Jonathan, and I'd like to share my experience on your channel for the potential mapping of these creatures' movements. I had a strange encounter in the woods with something I couldn't see. I live in southwest Pennsylvania near Pittsburgh. A buddy of mine used to frequent the reservoir in Westmoreland County. And to be clear, it's a pretty large lake that's private property, so the human traffic down there is slim. A couple of years ago, my friend and I had become pretty die-hard fishermen, and with this place, I could understand why. Because this place was private property, it wasn't overfished, and the fishing was awesome. Anyway, we spent 2 or 3 years going there twice a month to camp out and catfish during the night. But at the end of that duration, for me, I experienced something strange. It was between midnight and 2 in the morning when I heard something rustling in the leaf litter from a distance. It didn't concern me much, just thought it was a raccoon or a deer. Then the closer it got, the closer I started listening to it. It was clear that this thing was coming towards me and it may not be a deer. So I keep listening, and at one point it steps on a fairly large branch and breaks it. So now I'm a little alarmed, and now I'm on my feet with a weak light pointing in that direction. When it got close enough, I could tell that it was definitely bipedal. At that point, I tried waking my sleeping friend, but he was not going to get up. So I stood there with my small headlamp pointing towards it as it got closer. The creepiest thing about it was that I knew it was on 2 feet, and it was walking around like it owned the place. No human is walking around there in the dark. I don't know what you know about eastern woodland, but there are these huge orb spider webs all over. Also, you wouldn't catch any sane man approaching a campfire in the woods without saying something. Whatever it was, I never heard it vocalize in any way, just its footsteps. It would take 2 or 3 steps and stop for a few seconds, and then take a few more and stop again. The way it was moving, and as close as it was now, it was looking right at me. So, when it got to the point when it was close to me, I'd say 80 feet, it paused again, and this weird fear came over me, like I had never felt before. And at that point, I held my heels in the lake and thought that if this thing comes out, I'm going to turn and jump into the water, and my buddy is on his own. It never did come out. It just paused there for a few. Moved off at the same pace in the direction it was traveling. I never spent a night out there again after that. My friend claims to have had an encounter of his own and claims that he heard them vocalize to each other in that same spot. He has an interview with the BFRO guy, and it's on YouTube. So then it was around Halloween a few years ago, and I am convinced that they migrate through here at that time of year, heading wherever. Thanks for listening, and I love your channel. Jonathan, I really appreciate you choosing this channel to share your experience with myself and your fellow subscribers, so thank you very much. On to tonight's second encounter. So this subscriber reached out to me today and asked if I had received his email, and I said yeah, I did, but I had it printed out already. But with everything that has been going on, I had put it aside for a little bit, and he actually said, I've got another encounter that I'm going to send to you. And I said, great, but I decided to share, instead of waiting for both, I decided to share this one today with you guys as well. So let's get into it. Hey Jeff, my name's JC, and I have an encounter I'd like to share with you. Feel free to share it. My encounter happened May of 2021. The location was Clemens, California, 30 minutes away from Stockton, California. I was homeless at the time, and I was living in my minivan. I was driving from Valley Springs, California, back to Stockton. As I'm driving, I ended up needing to pee really bad. The time was 4:40-ish, so I ended up pulling over off of McKintrey Road in the little town of Clemens. So as I made a right-hand turn onto the road about a half a mile down the road, my van just suddenly dies. So I pull off to the side and get out and pop the hood. My van was having electrical issues. So I finally got back into the van. By the way, I was traveling with my service dog, Scooter, and turned the key over, and the van started. So I began heading toward the river that opens at around 5 a.m. Before I pulled into the river, I get this really bad feeling. Something was telling me not to go down by the river and to turn back around. But I really needed to pee, so I ignored the red flag I was given and proceeded back down that way. As soon as I pulled into the river area and into the parking lot, my van died again. So I got out of my van, and my dog was lying in the passenger seat. Tingles with the wiring again, and I heard this really deep growl. I grew up on this river as a child, and the only thing that I've ever seen was a few deer, a rattlesnake once. That's it. So as soon as I heard this growl, my guy told me to get back in the van quickly. I noticed in the shrubs about 50 feet away, this very large, brown, maybe tan animal came walking out of the brush and onto the parking lot. It was huge and on all fours for a moment. Then, all of a sudden, my dog wakes up, sniffed the air, and immediately retreated to the back of the van and lied down on the floor. Then I turned my attention back to this creature, and it had stood on its two legs and was just standing there staring at me. I never felt fear like that. I did at that moment. I was so scared that I couldn't even look away. The creature took a few steps forward, then stopped, and then hunched down and started smelling towards my direction. And it stayed slightly hunched and continued staring at me and my van. It had to have been there at least a couple of minutes. Then it turns and starts walking back toward the tree line in the brush. Right before it disappeared, it turned half of its body around to give me one more look before it disappeared. And it did leave right before the sun came out. At that point, I really had to pee. I was not about to get out of the van and use the bathroom because of that creature, and I didn't want to leave my dog alone while I was in the rest area. Then, by the grace of God, my van decided to start up and I got out of there. I eventually relieved myself after getting off of that road. Thanks for sharing, Jeff. Have a great day. So I'm looking forward to hearing his second experience. I did offer to have him come on. Hopefully he'll take that up and come on and share both of his encounters with us. On to today's third experience. Hey Jeff, my name's Mark, and I've recently seen tracks 6¼ inches wide of canine. I've seen a large black blur at night right near where I park. My wife and I have become homeless 1.5 years ago, and a lot of times we park down by this local park next to the river. The other day it was 5 in the morning, and the grass right behind where I was parked was untouched. 2 hours later I came back out of the car, and there were huge paw prints through the grass, and also looked like something had killed a rabbit. I followed the paw prints about 100 yards back toward the river and down, and then I came back, so I didn't have a weapon. Also, near the train tracks by the highway, I recently found a big area or something large had laid down to sleep. It was 8.5 feet wide by 7.5 feet. It was large and oval. What should I do? I've warned Parts Department to cut the grass and be on the lookout for a large canine. But me and you both know something with 6.25-inch paws can only be one thing. It was deer season in 1978 when my brother and I ventured into a region north of Caribou, Maine, near Eagle and Square Lakes. This was an area in which we've hunted many times and had scored fairly well through the years. Getting fairly near to the location with our truck, we still had a reasonably long hike into the area where we were going to begin our hunt. It was several hours later when we had scored our first buck of the season, and having butchered and bagged it, we were making our way out of the forest. At some point, being overcome by the burden of carrying such a heavy load, I had stopped and put my pack down and placed my gun against a tree in a leaning posture. As soon as my hand hit the tree, I drew it back quickly, having felt something sticky and moist. As I pulled my hand away to look at it, with my palm now facing me, I knew immediately from years of hunting that my hand was smeared with viscous, sticky, old animal blood. My brother said to me, "Oh my God, what is that?" I said to him, "It's on the tree," and at the same time we both looked up. Draped over a limb about 20 feet off the ground was the complete body of a doe, and it was not old at all. We could see that it was fully intact, with the exception being that both of its front legs were snapped off. There were 2 stubs, which we could plainly see from our position. With that, my brother gets the harebrained idea, which he is going to climb up and pull it down, which he proceeded to do. He now having blood from the tree all over his clothes and hands. He gave the doe a shove, and she came tumbling down to the ground with a whack. Standing over it, she did not appear to be a day old, and more than likely had been placed there on this very day which we had found her. Based on the lack of resistance as we grabbed the head, it appeared as though the neck had been broken as well, but by what? In all our days of hunting, we had neither seen nor heard of such a thing being found in Maine. We began to examine the tree trunks, looking for any indication of something having climbed the tree, and there was nothing to be seen. No black bear would have left a carcass untouched, and I had never heard of a black bear treeing its catch, with both of the legs being broken cleanly, and with the neck as broken as well. The rest of the hide was completely untouched, no claw marks or blood stains. The carcass was in perfect condition. When we made it back to Prescott Island, we were stirred up no small commotion with our talking about our find. Having left the doe in the woods, it was then that one of our cronies had said, "Why didn't you bring it out so we could see it?" To which we said we were already carrying 125 pounds of meat. They became so incensed about what we had said that they decided we'd have to go back and get the doe. The following day, having driven back up there and hiked back in where the doe had been, it was gone. With the discovery of the deer being gone, this kid named Joey starts blowing off how we had planned this to freak everyone out. And I said, "Hey, wait a minute. You asked us to come back here. I didn't even want to go, nor did I ask you." With that, he and the others started looking around when this guy said, "Hey, check this out." He was pointing to and staring at what was this large singular footprint in the soft peat. Then one of the boys said it was the footprint of the hairy man. Well, as you would imagine, that about iced the proverbial cake for all of us, and being unarmed, we exited hastily, to say the least. I and the others are now believers in something that we all had heard about in the passing through the years and never had seen. With this newfound evidence of the first deer and now the footprint, we are convinced that there was something large and well able to kill wandering around up there, and it changed our lives forever. Today's fourth encounter. My wife and I were returning home on the interstate one night in December of 2009. In the distance, as we were coming up a grade, we saw a semi on the shoulder with its flashers on. As we got closer, there was quite a bit of blood on the pavement with some pieces of debris from the truck, like a broken lens and the mirror lying on the road. We were driving quite slowly as we were approaching the truck and noticed something on the shoulder, which we believed to be a bear or a moose. Suffice to say, it was something very large, and it appeared that it had collided with the truck that was up ahead. We pulled up to the truck and got out. Walking over to the cab, and we saw the driver still inside. I grabbed the side rail and jumped up on the fuel tank to check on the driver. He was sitting in the seat with his head in his hands, still behind the wheel of the truck. I tapped on the window and asked if he was okay. It took him a few seconds to respond, and he rolled the window down. I could see that he was in shock and didn't answer right away. About a minute later, while I was telling my wife to call the police, he said to me, "I crashed into a werewolf. It was running across the road back there chasing a deer." I said to him, "You hit a what?" He repeated himself, saying that he had demolished the front of his truck, hitting a werewolf that was crossing the highway. I climbed down from the cab and walked to the front of the truck. The lights were still on, and the entire grille, front bumper, and hood were buckled inward. The left front fender and headlamp were demolished, and the truck was leaking water from what appeared to be the radiator. It was about 10 minutes later when a trooper came roaring down the highway, and an ambulance soon followed. At this time, the driver still had not come out of his cab. He was sitting there in silence, holding his head in his hands. As the trooper drove up, we told him briefly what we knew, and he jumped out to talk to the man. Moments later, a second ambulance came to the scene, as well as another trooper. The driver was now out of the truck and talking. About 300 feet behind the truck, the creature was on the side of the road. My wife stayed by our car while one of the troopers and I started walking back towards it. The trooper had his gun drawn and told me to stay behind him. He said that if this creature was still alive, it may jump up and try to hurt us. The trooper had a powerful flashlight with an expendable beam. I was walking maybe 15 feet behind him as we approached this animal. As soon as his light hit it, I saw the blackened face of a dog-like beast with blood pouring out of its mouth. I actually saw one of its eyes blink and its hand move slightly. I knew immediately that this was no moose or anything else that is known to be in these parts of the woods. It was exactly as the driver had said. He had crashed into a werewolf with his truck. The trooper told me to go back and stand by the truck. As soon as I reached the truck, he fired 3 rounds, point-blank range, into the creature to put it down. A few minutes later, he took a report from us as to what the driver had told us. We overheard as well what the driver was saying to the ambulance crew and the other trooper. He said that he was fairly certain he was going to hit the deer and was trying all evasive measures in short period of time not to do so, saying that the trailer brakes had locked up and the trailer had begun to swing wide, and all of a sudden this werewolf was now squarely in front of his truck and unavoidable. He said that when he hit this creature, He wasn't wearing his seatbelt, and the impact caused him to fly forward, smashing the windshield with his forehead, which explained to me why he was sitting there in a daze holding his head. But thank God he wasn't cut or bleeding. As we were leaving, the ambulance crew was putting the man in the back of the vehicle. My wife and I took off. This is the man's wife's part. I was asking my husband what he had seen because I had stayed by the car. I saw the trooper fire shots and had only heard conversations. My husband told me that it was a werewolf and it was still alive and bleeding badly, which was why the trooper had decided to put it down. I said to my husband that I couldn't wait to hear the news reports on what they'd have to say the following day. But when the morning had come, there was nothing. We sat by the TV all day waiting, and nothing at all was said. The next day, my husband actually called the local news station and inquired about not hearing the story. They had said they knew nothing about any such story and asked my husband what he had seen. My husband must have spent 30 minutes on the phone with them, recounting the entire story. The next day, again, nothing was heard or said on the news. Nothing was in the local papers the entire week. We both knew what we had seen and heard, and yet not a word was spoken about it. We thought that surely this would be great interest in such a story, but it was never told. And today's final encounter. My husband and I had for many years made Maine our go-to spot for summer getaways. This whole attraction for Maine had begun after the two of us shared a read of Henry David Thoreau's book, The Maine Woods. This was actually our 6th summer vacation in the state. We were camping and canoeing in Katahdin woods and waters. I remember the day of the incident as if it was yesterday, being August 27th, 1971. The two of us, having risen early from our night's slumber, had prepared a campfire breakfast and afterwards slipped our canoe into the lake for a morning paddle. There was a very heavy mist floating on the lake that morning. The sun had not yet risen enough to burn it off as we began our paddle slowly, following the contour of the lake's eastern shoreline. The lake's appearance was like that of a mirror, with the trees along the edge reflecting on its surface. As we were paddling and approaching one of the many bends on the lake shore, we rounded to see a cow moose standing ankle-deep in the water at the lake's edge. She was about 100 yards away from us as she slowly lifted and turned her head to view the intruders. Moments later, sensing no apparent threat from us, she lowered her head into the lake and began to eat some submerged vegetation. She was standing in the reflection and shade of the trees along the shoreline. As we watched her for maybe 20 more minutes, at some point my husband whispered to me that he saw something black moving in the brush maybe 50 feet behind the cow, and now both of us had our eyes fixed on that bank. We were seeing what appeared to be a lump of black fur, occasionally protruding from over the top of the brush and edging closer to the cow in the water, yet she was totally unmoved by what we were seeing, apparently unaware of what was moving closer behind her. What happened next was astounding, to say the least. A creature of incredible proportions leapt out of the brush with 2 large strides, was on this cow, smashing her down headlong into the shallows. She had barely turned her head when this beast prevailed upon her. The beast, which we now realized was a Sasquatch, had driven her head into the lake bottom with her legs kicking and moving briefly as death took a hold of her. The Sasquatch, up until that point in time, was unaware of our presence on the lake. Shortly after the kill, it stood up, raising to its feet and turning to look directly at us. The water in which we sat was only about 2 feet deep, and the spot in which this beast stood, the water level was more likely less than a foot. I know my husband was thinking exactly what I was. In these shallows, that creature could have run us down in a matter of seconds and done us in as it had done with that moose. The two of us immediately started to redirect the canoe and paddle out into deeper water as fast as we could. The Sasquatch stood its ground, staring us down as we made our way into the lake. As we paddled quickly to the point where we were now in deeper water, perhaps several hundred yards away from this creature, we felt safe enough to stop and watch. It was at this point that this creature grabbed the cow around its neck in somewhat of a chokehold and dragged her carcass out of the lake and into the trees. As you could well imagine, the two of us, having seen this attack taking place in such a violent fashion, were in complete and utter state of shock. It was akin to having a bomb explode in the middle of the night as you slept. The brush on the bank was maybe 3 or 4 feet tall, and this creature had to have been crawling through it in order to get close enough to that cow to launch its attack. The speed in which it was able to close the gap from the bank to the moose was incredible. This creature must have covered 40 to 50 feet in just a few leaps. As it landed on this moose's back, it was visibly at least a couple of feet taller than the moose's height, even in its hunched position on the moose's body. When it stood over the moose and turned its gaze towards us, it had to have been all of 9 feet tall and as big as a house, standing defiantly and facing us. Its arms hung out and away from its body, apparently forced to do so because of its size and dimensions of its musculature. As it stood in the misty shadows, the creature's fur appeared to be almost black in color and virtually covered its entire body. The other incredible aspect of this event was the apparent ease in which it had killed this beast. I have no idea how much this moose weighed, but it was at least as big as a large horse, and this Sasquatch wrapped its arm around its neck and casually walked away into the trees with it. It didn't struggle with it or drag it so much as a foot. It simply picked it up and walked away like it was nothing. We didn't see any blows thrown by the beast either. It just seemed to drive the cow's head into the lake bottom in somewhat of a chokehold, and it was over and done with rather quickly. There you have it, folks. I hope you all enjoyed this night-ending bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps the channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please, everyone, stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and our friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.